So now that we've designed our end game interface and we've got all the objects on the screen ready to go, and before we start to populate it again with our score and then the ability to share that score, we're first going to focus on the ability to actually restart the game. Now the reason we're focusing on this section first is predominantly down to the fact that once we get to this view, we can't really do anything at all. Apart from, again, sharing the score, maybe displaying the score, is we're stuck on this screen. All the other screens had ways to get to this screen, but we don't have a way to get all the way back to our main screen. So as well as this is going to be dismissing not just this view, but the game view underneath and returning back to the home view, it's also going to be the way that we restart and play the game over and over again. And this all works simply off our restart button. So we need to create an action for this. So I'm going to scroll down to the bottom now, and I'll just simply space out at the bottom here. I can get rid of this here. We no longer need this commented code, as you can see. I'm going to right click or control click and drag this button all the way over. Make sure it's selected as an action. And I'm going to simply call it is restart game, and then connect that up. There we go. So now that we've created that action to that button, we can now add the code in to give us the ability to switch all the way back to our first view. So what I'm going to do then is close our assistant editor, go back to our standard editor, and I'm going to jump straight into our end game view controller and then space out the newly added action of our restart game. And all we simply need to do then is tell it that once we press this button, to go back to our first view. Now, we're not doing this by a segue in the interface. We got to do this by code, and this is purely because when we're on our home view and we switch to our game view, think about this. It places that game view on top of our home view. Then once we play the game, it then plays and then it ends and switches to our end game view. It then places that end view on top of our game view. So we're stacking the views on top of each other. Now, what we could do is, once we're in this view, make it switch to the home view. But then all we're doing is taking that stack of 3 views that we've created and then putting the home view back on it. And we're just stacking the views over and over again. And that's not really what we want to do. What we want to do is, by pressing the restart button, it dismisses the end game view and the game view. So the only view in the stack now is the home view. And then we go through the process again, and then dismiss them all once we end the game, and so on and so on. Even this is only a very small application, there's not much happening in the game. If it was a much bigger application you were doing this, over time stacking all these views of all this information would eventually cause a memory issue and the application to crash, and that's not what we want. So the correct way to go back to a previous view is always to dismiss the current view that we're on. Now the challenge that we have is we're trying to dismiss 2 views from one button. Normally you would always dismiss the view that you're on, but we're trying to dismiss the view in the middle, which is currently the game view. So we kind of have a little challenge on our hands, but let's start off with baby steps. Let's first learn about how we can dismiss the current view that we're on. So what we need to do then is simply, so the way we got to this end game view is simply by transitioning from code when we presented the view to our user. So the way we dismiss that is by doing self dot dismiss, and then we get the animated completion here and add that in. So in the animated here, we can select true, and then the completion, we can simply do nil, and that with a bracket there. So basically what that's telling us now is we're getting the view itself, and then we're going to simply dismiss it. And by dismissing that view, it's a very simple process. It gives us the option to have it animated. Now, if we go back to our game view controller, where we had the function here to present it to our user, our end game view, we told it to present, animated, we had false. That didn't give us any type of transition whatsoever. So back within the end game view.swift, we've set the animated here to be true. So as soon as we switched here without an animation, we'll also switch back without one as well. So let's go to build and run. Now again, like I said before, the challenge we've got on our hands is trying to dismiss 2 views. Now, once I press this button, it's going to dismiss the current view that we're on. So while we wait for it to go through the process to get to that end game view. Again, so when we press our restart button, it's going to dismiss the current view that we're on and take us back to the view that you're currently now seeing. So we just wait for this game to now end. There we go. So I've set it up now then to dismiss the view. So we press restart and it takes us back to our previous view. So it's dismissed that view. So what I want to do now is have the ability to also dismiss this view. Now I don't want to create an additional button, an additional action on this screen to take us back to our home view, because that simply defeats the object, and that's not really what we want. We want to be able to, when we press that restart button, it dismisses the end game view, the game view, in the split of a second, straight away back to our home view. And how we can dismiss an alternative view that's not on this screen is a little bit different to how we've just dismissed the current view. So it's pretty much the same method. We want to dismiss the view, but we got to change up how we call in the view and what view we want to dismiss. So where before we did self.dismiss, we can't do that because we're no longer on that view. We have to do self dot, and then we need to get the presenting view controller, which is scroll down now. So the presenting view controller, do our question mark here for our optional wrap, dot dismiss. So what that's basically telling us is when we restart the game, it dismisses the view. Then we're going to get the presenting view controller, which is the view that our user is then given, which lucky for us is going to be the game view. And then we're going to choose to dismiss, which will also do a false on the animated and completion, end that with a nil. And then that should also dismiss that view. So when we press that button, theoretically, it should dismiss both those views, and then we should be presented with the home view. Sounds very simple, but how you tackle it is very different for both views. Again, our first line of code just dismisses the current view. Our second one, we need to select the presenting view controller, again, the view that we're being presented when we already have dismissed our end game view, and then dismiss that. So let's go to build and run then, and let's test this out. So we start the game, and again, we just wait for the countdown to go on. Play the game as usual. Now we still haven't set up the ability to get our score and place it in our in-game view. We'll be doing that in the next lecture. But once the game has ended and presented our end game view, and our user wants to restart, now again, press it, all of them are dismissed, and then we're back to the start game, and we can play the game over and over again. It's just as simple as that. We're dismissing the current view, then getting the presenting view, which again is the game view, and then dismissing that straight after. Dismissing two views at once, just like that. So there we go then. We can now dismiss the two views and restart our game. We have the restart function now all set up. So now in the next lecture then, we're going to focus on the ability to transform or kind of bring over, transfer the score that our user got in the game to the end label on the end screen.